Ja Morant has certainly headlined the NBA world over the past couple of weeks with that weird situation going on in Memphis. We're going to take a look at everything that has transpired between Morant and the Grizzlies and talk about how he may be traded before the trade deadline and look at some teams that could be on the Morant destination list. I'm Nick Roloff. This is NBA Now. But what is going on is the question here. Well, Morant has not been enjoying life so far in Memphis this season. Let's put it that way. The coaching staff has had a different thought process. They're not playing Morant as much as usual. He's playing closer to 28, 30 minutes a game rather than 34, 35. In terms of the philosophy is to try to get shorter stints but higher intensity rather than longer stints with maybe lower intensity. And Morant, not the biggest fan, and he's also been struggling statistically, but he said after a game when talking about a tough loss where he showed absolutely no effort, by the way, against the Los Angeles Lakers last Friday, he talked about, well, ask the coaching staff. Maybe they'll play me more. And it just is absolute chaos. And due to these comments and quote-unquote detrimental conduct to the team, the Memphis Grizzlies actually ended up suspending Ja Morant for a game early this past week. So it got to a point where the Grizzlies suspended Ja. And this just goes to the fact that the tensions has been rising. And Shams Charania noted this when speaking on ESPN one day, said that the head coach for the Grizzlies and Ja have not been getting along, and the relationship between the two is not very good at all. Now, if you remember, Tumas actually took over for Taylor Jenkins a year ago, and the entire reason that Taylor Jenkins was let go by the Grizzlies halfway through the season was because the new offense that he implemented, which was more predicated on isolation, fast-paced, taking advantage of mismatches, rather than a slower-paced pick-and-roll-led offense, which Ja Morant thrived in. So Ja didn't like the offense a year ago, bitched about it, and ultimately got his head coach fired. And then the new head coach, Ja Morant, has issues with as well. More coming up here, but go give me a follow on today's show at Nick_Roloff, daily NBA content over on Twitter. Appreciate a follow as we get it rolling. I also want this to be very much on the record here. Ja Morant is not a player that should really have a ton of control inside an organization. He just isn't the most reliable guy. He was suspended 34 games in 2023. If you remember the off-the-court incidents of IG Live, the guns, let's not act like Ja Morant is a guy that has had no history with causing issues within an organization. So this is now 3 separate incidents this year, last year with Taylor Jenkins, and then obviously in 2023, where Ja is being a massive distraction for his teammates and the rest of the Grizzlies organization. So the question has to be asked, is Ja Morant potentially going to be traded because the Grizzlies want to wipe their hands clean of the former number 2 overall pick out of Murray State? Well, Sam Amick, on a Morant possible trade, said at his best, he's a player who was in the running for face of the league, but his baggage has been well chronicled. But there is no shortage of teams that will continue to monitor this situation. The Minnesota Timberwolves, per a team source, are one. Ditto for the Sacramento Kings. That's just a small sample size of what might be out there and not out there if the Morant sweepstake ever actually begins. And I do want this to be noted as well. Morant is still on his 5-year max rookie contract extension that he signed just a couple years ago. He's got 2 more years left on his deal after this season at $42.1 and $44.8 million. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies could have actually extended Ja Morant this past offseason on a 2-year, $123 million deal. They elected not to do so. I would say that is probably the right decision as well. So as it currently stands, Morant doesn't have a extension in place, and he is scheduled to be a free agent in the 2028 offseason. Before we look at some teams that could trade for Ja Morant, do you think Ja will be traded in the next calendar year? Between now and the trade deadline or next offseason? Y for yes or N for no? I'll be honest. I do actually think he gets traded. I think it is inevitable. And I know there has been reports out there that the Memphis Grizzlies don't want to tear it down. They don't want to rebuild. I just think as a small market team, which Memphis is, they have had success over the last 5 years with this current kind of structure of Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane. Well, they obviously trade Desmond Bane for a haul of draft picks this offseason to the Orlando Magic. A trade that right now looks pretty good, by the way, with Bane not playing good basketball in Orlando. I do think that ultimately changes. But with those draft picks, you could see a way where Memphis convinces itself, okay, we'll trade one of Ja Morant or Jaren Jackson Jr., get a load of picks, and then build around the one that you ultimately keep. And in this scenario, I think they ultimately trade Ja. I think Ja's a better player than Jaren Jackson Jr., but Ja's headache off the court and within this organization right now, I think is worth shipping out and building around Jaren Jackson Jr., their first-round picks over the last couple of years, like Cedric Howard, who's been phenomenal, by the way, and Zach Edey. So if they do ultimately trade Ja, which I think is inevitable at this point, here are the 5 teams that I think are likely going to show interest. We heard Sam Amick mention the Timberwolves and Kings. Minnesota's fascinating to me because I don't think the fit with him and Anthony Edwards in the same backcourt would really go that well. Both players predominantly on the ball, and we know Morant likes to have the ball in his hands at a very high rate. Don't love the fit there, both offensively and defensively. But Sacramento makes a ton of sense. They've been looking for a point guard ever since they traded De'Aaron Fox a year ago, and I've always made the joke, they're looking like for a point guard. Well, you had a all-star point guard on your team, so don't know why you ended up trading him. But they will definitely register interest. I think Houston makes a ton of sense, too. Fred VanVleet, with that season injury, they're likely going to look for a point guard of the future. I like what Amen Thompson has done this year, but is he a real point guard? I don't know. And we know Miami and Phoenix are likely going to show interest as well. Suns looking to add a partner for Devin Booker. Miami always star hunting. We'll get into more here in a second. But this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks, you and I make decisions every single day. The right decisions can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement on this basketball season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. How you play is up to you. You want the flexibility, choose Flex Play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the Power Play. No matter your play, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. I did a season-long entry for the season, and I got more than Brandon Miller points per game. He's been banged up, so we'll see if he comes back and flourishes. Dylan Harper, actually averaging more than 13.2 points per game, but he also got hurt and is missing a couple of weeks. Took the more than on Luka Doncic, and, well, through the first couple weeks of the year, that one looks like it might be shattered by Mr. Doncic. Either way, download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. When I think about where Ja Morant could be traded, I think there are 2 ways you can look at this, and I wanted to mention both. I think there's a team that is the best fit for Ja in terms of winning and stylistically, but I also think there is a team, an organization that would be the best for Ja Morant personally. And I think personally, that place is the Miami Heat. I think the Heat culture and organization kind of gets a little bit of a over-exaggeration, if you will, in terms of their military-esque type of system. Like, people think it's like a private boarding school overseas over there. It's not that strict, but they do have a really good culture and organization and a level of professionalism, which may allow Ja Morant to grow up and ultimately become the best version of himself. But the best fit basketball-wise, I do believe, is with the Houston Rockets, because him in that offense with KD, Şengün, running the pick and roll, like, would just be fantastic. And if you're the Rockets, there's definitely a package you can create with draft capital, as well as like a young player like Reed Shepherd, as well as some salary to make it worth the Grizzlies' while. Because this might ultimately not be a blockbuster 4 first-round pick package for Ja Morant, which you would have said the case would have been just 2 or 3 years ago. Like, an NBA executive told ESPN that Ja Morant's trade value might be very similar to the 2023 trade that sent Kyrie Irving from the Nets to Dallas. Remember, around that time, there was a lot of drama surrounding Kyrie and his off-the-court statements, his injury history. And remember, that trade was Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and an unprotected first-rounder with 2 seconds. Like, if you're the Houston Rockets, you have a boatload of picks. You offer 1 first-round pick, 2 seconds, Reed Shepherd, and salary. Like, maybe Memphis might take that, and that's the best offer they ultimately get. Like, it's been a common thought here early in NBA circles that the market for Ja Morant is relatively low. Like, there won't be a lot of teams willing to offer a massive package for Ja Morant. There might be multiple teams interested, but then they won't be shipping the house. So it'll be very fascinating to see if Ja Morant becomes available, what teams are interested, and what the offers for the former number 2 overall pick ultimately are. More coming up here in a second, but want more NBA videos? Well, got to show our bosses you guys want it and subscribe to the channel. Join the NBA Now family. 421,000 plus subscribers. Join the Hoop Heads. I actually did want to close out this video by looking at the NBA draft because just last week we did a mock draft before the college basketball season got underway, and some of these top prospects did get their debuts this week and really showcased out. Big debuts on Monday for AJ Dybansta and Darryn Peterson, the guard from Kansas and the guard/forward from BYU. Dybansta played Villanova on a neutral court. Darryn Peterson played Green Bay at home. Peterson, in just 22 minutes, had 21 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, and was able to shoot very efficiently. AJ Dybansta, in 32 minutes against the Wildcats of Villanova, had 21 points on 50% shooting. Both of these players just looked so calm, so, matured, and almost looked too good for their competition, if we're going to be honest. Peterson certainly did, but granted, he's playing a low-level Division I school like Green Bay, and Dybansta looked phenomenal against Villanova, who really surprised me in terms of their ability to defend and compete with the 8th-ranked BYU Cougars, who were projected to win this game by about 9 points. It was a close one from start to finish. But either way, these two continue to show why this draft class has been highly regarded. Oh, and we have to mention Cam Boozer as well, the forward from Duke, because these 3 created a 3-headed monster at the top of this draft class. Now, Boozer did not have the best game offensively, 15 points on 3 of 12 shooting, was able to get to the charity stripe early and often, but had a double-double, 13 boards, 3 steals, a block. Coop and I, producer Coop, who is a Texas fan watching the game, told me before this, yeah, listen, I just believe that Boozer was definitely the worst out of the 3 in their debuts. I'm not here to dispute that, but here's the reason why Boozer, in my opinion, is so special. He shot 3 of 12 from the field, yet he was, without a question, the best player on the floor and had the largest impact in that game between Duke and Texas, where Duke still won by 15, by the way, 75-60. His ability to shoot as poorly as he did in his first ever college game, but still be the best player and have the impact, speaks to the high level of play that he has at his disposal. Just an absolute force on the glass, an elite defender. 3 steals and a block, 4 stocks. Are you kidding? That's just elite stuff. This draft class is absolutely special. And I think we're going to see unbelievable levels of tanking potentially in March and April of 2026 when some teams are eliminated from playoff contention. You talk about these 3, but then you talk about Koa Pete, who I would argue was the best freshman in the first week of the season so far. His debut against Florida on Monday was sensational. Best player on the floor without a question in that game. He looks great. Michael Brown from Louisville. Haynes Steinbach from Washington. You see the 2 freshmen in Arkansas, Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas, they're balling out. This freshman class is unbelievable. And then you have returners like Bennett Sturts, LeBaron Philon, all dominating. Yaxel Lenderborg. I'm telling you what, if you have a lottery pick this year, you won't be disappointed. And we'll talk more about it as we get closer to June. But just a couple years ago, the Reed Shepherd draft class, where Zachary Sachet went number 1, you might be able to make the argument that 10 players from this draft class would have went number one in that draft just 2 years ago. And that's not a crazy thing to say. Some players from that class are very, very good. Stephon Castle, you look at Alex Sarr continuing to play good ball. But, like, these guys this year are absolutely ridiculous in terms of their potential long-term. Guards, forwards, big men. Boy, it's going to be a lot of fun to track their progress throughout this year. And I'll be doing it over on Twitter, so go give me a follow.